Be honest. Does your stomach sink every time a client asks, "So, how much do you charge?" Maybe your throat tightens, your palms sweat, and you feel like you have to defend yourself before you even get the words out. I've been there. Every photographer has been there. But here's the truth. Pricing doesn't have to feel like a panic button. It doesn't have to feel like a pop quiz you weren't ready for. Today we're going to walk through how to take the guesswork out of your pricing, how to set numbers that actually make sense for your life and your business, and how to stop second-guessing yourself every time you talk about money. By the time we're done, you'll have a foundation you can lean on instead of a shaky guess you're afraid to say out loud. When I first started, pricing felt like trying to solve a riddle with no right answer. I did what most beginners do. I checked other photographers' websites and set my prices around theirs. Sometimes I went lower because I was afraid no one would book me otherwise. And it sort of worked for a while. People booked, but I wasn't making enough to feel stable, and I was exhausted. I knew deep down I couldn't sustain my business on guesswork, but I didn't know what else to do. The problem with copying someone else's prices is that you have no idea what their business actually costs. Maybe they live in a different city with a different cost of living. Maybe they're running photography as a side hustle and don't need it to pay their bills. Maybe they're undercharging and burning themselves out too. Their numbers have nothing to do with your numbers. That's why pricing by comparison keeps you stuck. You're building your business on someone else's foundation. The first real breakthrough for me was realizing that pricing isn't magic. It's math. It's not about being worth a certain number. It's about building a structure that allows you to stay in business and pay yourself fairly. That structure starts with your cost of doing business. It's not glamorous, but it's the truth. If you don't know how much it costs you to run your photography business for a year, you're guessing. And guessing is why you feel shaky every time you say your prices out loud. So sit down and look at everything you spend to keep your business running. Your camera gear, your editing software, your gallery service, your website hosting, your insurance, your marketing costs, the props you buy for newborn sessions, the mileage or gas for getting to sessions, all of it. Add it up and you'll probably be surprised by how high that number actually is. For me, the first time I did this, I nearly fell out of my chair. I realized that what I thought of as a little side cost here and there was actually thousands of dollars a year. That was money I had to earn back just to break even, before I even paid myself a salary. Once you know that number, the next step is adding in your salary. And this is where so many photographers get tripped up. They think, oh, I'll just pay myself whatever is left over. But you can't build a sustainable business on leftovers. You need to decide what you want to earn. Maybe you want to bring in $50,000 a year. Maybe you want $25,000 part-time. Whatever your number is, add it to your expenses. That combined total is what your business needs to generate. That's your revenue goal. Now divide that by how many sessions you want to shoot. Not how many you think you should shoot, not how many your friend shoots, how many you can realistically handle without burning out. For me, when I was starting, I thought the only way to succeed was to cram in as many sessions as possible. But the truth is, I wasn't doing my best work when I was stretched that thin. So I started asking, how many clients can I serve well? If the answer is 50, then divide your revenue goal by 50. That's what each session needs to average. If the answer is 100, divide by 100. The point is, your prices are not random anymore. They're rooted in the reality of your life. I know that as soon as I say that, some of you are thinking, but no one in my area will pay that much. I've heard it from photographers everywhere. I used to think it too. But the truth is, every area has clients who value photography and will pay for it when they see the value and when you present it clearly. I'm not saying every single person will. They won't. And that's okay. You don't need every single person. You need the right ones. And the right ones will show up when your pricing is aligned with sustainability instead of fear. Here's the thing. You don't have to jump from charging $150 to charging $1,300 overnight. You can stair-step your way up. But the important part is that you're climbing a staircase, not running in circles. Every price increase should be deliberate, tied to your actual math, not just a random guess or a panicked reaction. I'll give you an example from my own journey. Years ago, I was charging $200 for newborn sessions. At first, I felt relieved every time someone booked, but after a while, I started to notice how resentful I felt when I was editing. I was putting in hours of setup, posing, editing, and delivering full galleries, and when I calculated the time against the pay, I was making less than minimum wage. One night, I finally sat down and crunched the numbers. To cover my costs and pay myself a livable income, I needed to triple my pricing. That number terrified me, but I knew I couldn't keep going the way I was. So I raised my rates. Some clients left, but others stayed. And new ones came who valued what I offered. The resentment faded, my confidence grew. I realized that I had been holding myself back by guessing instead of planning. That's the moment I want for you. The moment where you stop guessing and start building. Because when you know your numbers, you can stand behind them. You don't have to panic when someone asks what you charge. You can answer calmly because you know it's not random, it's not inflated, it's not made up. It's math. And math doesn't lie. The other benefit of pricing with clarity is that it gives you freedom. When you know what you need to make per session, you can plan your year. You can decide if you want to run minis, how many weddings you'll take on, or whether you want to focus more on newborns. You're not just scrambling for whatever comes your way. You're choosing intentionally. And that's when your business starts to feel like a business, not a gamble. So if you take nothing else from this section, take this. Pricing without guessing is not about being the cheapest or the most expensive. It's about being sustainable. It's about knowing your numbers so you can build a business that lasts. And in the next part, we're going to talk about what happens once you know those numbers. Because math is one thing, but speaking your prices out loud to clients is another. That's where the nerves usually hit. So I'll walk you through how to talk about pricing without feeling awkward, how to keep your confidence steady in conversations, and how to stop over-explaining when you share your rates. Knowing your numbers is one thing. Saying them out loud to clients is another. For a lot of photographers, the moment someone asks, "So how much is it?" everything we worked out on paper suddenly vanishes. We freeze, our voices drop, and we rush to fill the silence with apologies, discounts, or nervous chatter. This is where confidence tends to crumble, not because our math is wrong, but because our delivery feels shaky. And if you've ever walked away from a conversation thinking, "Why did I say that? Why did I offer that?" you know how quickly nerves can hijack the moment. I remember early in my career when a client sat across from me at a coffee shop and asked about my pricing. I knew what I wanted to charge. I had even rehearsed it in the car before walking in. But when she looked at me and said, "So what are your packages?" I panicked. I blurted out a number lower than what I had planned, then immediately started explaining why it was still fair. By the end of my explanation, I had talked myself in circles. She said yes, but instead of feeling proud, I felt defeated. I hadn't honored the work I was doing. I had let my fear of sounding expensive push me into underselling. That moment taught me that pricing isn't just about math. It's about communication. The first shift you need to make when it comes to talking about your prices is to remember that your pricing is not an apology. It's information. Clients aren't asking you to defend your worth or justify every piece of gear you own. They're asking for clarity. How much is it is not a trap. It's a simple question. When you start treating it like a test, you pile on extra details that confuse instead of clarify. Think about it this way. If someone asked you how to get to your studio, you wouldn't ramble about traffic patterns or the history of the neighborhood. You'd give them the address and maybe a parking tip. That's the same energy you want when you talk about pricing. Calm, clear, straightforward. One of the best tools I developed for myself was creating simple, practiced phrasing that felt natural. Not a stiff script I had to memorize, but a rhythm that allowed me to answer without panic. Instead of saying, "Well, it depends on the session, and sometimes I can add extra digitals, and if that's too much, I can maybe give a discount," I began saying, "My family sessions start at $400, and most families invest around $650 for the full experience with products." That answer is short, confident, and sets an anchor. It communicates value without apology. And the more I practiced it, the easier it became to let the words flow without fear. Another key piece is silence. Most of us are terrified of silence in sales conversations. The moment we state a number, we feel the urge to fill the quiet with explanations or justifications. But silence is not the enemy. Silence is space. It gives the client time to process. If you say, "The session fee is $400, and then sit calmly, you're showing confidence. If you rush to add, "But I can do it for less," or "I can add digitals," or "Maybe I can include a print," you're teaching the client that your pricing is flexible. The truth is, the silence feels longer to you than it does to them. They're just doing the math in their head. Let them. Breathe. Smile. Let the silence work for you. Body language also plays a massive role. If you say your prices while fidgeting, looking away, or slouching, the insecurity shows even if your words are steady. Clients pick up on that energy, whether consciously or not. But if you sit tall, look them in the eye, and say it with a calm tone, you project steadiness. You don't need to fake a salesperson's bravado. Just think about how you'd tell a friend about a restaurant you love. You'd be warm, confident, and relaxed. That's the energy you want to carry when you talk about money. I once had a client who responded to my price with, "Oh, that's more than I expected." Old me would have launched into discount mode, but by then I had practiced enough to know better. So I smiled and said, "I completely understand. Photography is an investment. Here's what that includes, and here's what most families choose afterward." I didn't rush. I didn't defend. And to my surprise, she nodded and said, "Okay, that makes sense." She booked at full price. That moment was a turning point. I realized that half of my fear around pricing wasn't about the client at all. It was about my own discomfort. Once I calmed that, clients often followed my lead. This is where role-playing can be incredibly powerful. Grab a friend or another photographer and practice. Have them push back with, "That's too expensive," and practice answering calmly. Something as simple as, "I understand, not every session is right for every family. Here's the link if you'd like to look over the details." No defense, no apology, just steady clarity. The more you practice this, the easier it becomes to stay calm in the real moment. And remember, not every client will say yes. Some will genuinely not have the budget. That doesn't make your prices wrong. It just means you're not the right fit for them at that moment. When you stop interpreting no as rejection, you stop panicking. You begin to understand that your job is not to book every single inquiry. Your job is to serve the right clients well. It also helps to have your pricing written down in a clean, professional format. That way you can introduce it verbally, then follow up with a PDF or a web page. This takes the pressure off you to remember every detail in conversation, but it doesn't replace the importance of saying it out loud. Too many photographers hide behind sending pricing guides by email. They avoid saying the number in real time, hoping the document will do the work for them. But what clients really want is to hear you say it with confidence. A guide is backup. Your voice is the anchor. The connection between math and communication is where the magic happens. The math gives you confidence because you know the numbers are real, not random. The communication allows you to carry that confidence into your client conversations. Together, they form the foundation of a pricing structure that not only works on paper, but also holds steady in real life. So, if you've ever stumbled through a pricing conversation, know that you're not alone. Every photographer has been there. The difference between staying stuck and moving forward is practice. Practice saying your numbers calmly. Practice letting silence sit. Practice reframing your language so it's clear and simple. Over time, what once felt terrifying becomes second nature. In the final section, we're going to go even deeper, because even if you know your math and even if you've practiced your delivery, if you're still carrying the belief that selling is sleazy, you'll trip yourself up every time. We'll talk about the mindset shift that turned sales from something I dreaded into something I could actually enjoy. And I'll share how to reframe your thinking so that talking about money feels less like a burden and more like part of the service you provide. When I look back at the years I struggled most with pricing, the real problem wasn't the numbers or even my delivery. The problem was the story I told myself about selling. I believed that selling was pushy. I believed that bringing up money would make clients uncomfortable. And I believed that if I were really talented, people would just know my value and happily pay without me ever having to say a word. Those beliefs kept me small, and they made every sales conversation feel like walking into battle. The shift began when I realized that selling is not about convincing, it's about clarity. That realization changed everything. Suddenly, my job wasn't to persuade someone that I was worth it. My job was simply to lay out the path, to explain what I offered in clear terms, and to let them decide. That reframe lifted a huge weight off my shoulders. I didn't need to twist anyone's arm. I just needed to be clear. Think about it this way. When you walk into a store, you expect to see prices. You expect the clerk to tell you how much something costs if you ask. You don't expect them to apologize for charging. You don't expect them to hand you a long explanation about how the price was calculated. You just want clarity. And if it's right for you, you buy it. If not, you leave. That's exactly how photography sales can feel when you shift your mindset. I once had a client tell me, "I love how calm you are when you talk about pricing. It makes me feel like I can trust you." That comment struck me because for years I had assumed clients wanted me to perform, to convince them, to hustle for their yes. In reality, what they wanted was the opposite. They wanted me to be steady, to know what I was talking about, and to guide them without pressure. They didn't need a sales pitch. They needed a leader. Part of this mindset shift is also detaching your self-worth from every client's decision. For a long time, if someone said no, I made it mean something about me. I told myself I wasn't talented enough, that I had overpriced, that I was failing. But here's the truth. When someone says no, all it means is that it's not the right fit for them at that time. That's it. It's not a reflection of your talent. It's not a judgment of your worth. It's just a decision. And when you stop personalizing every no, you stop panicking. You realize that a no is simply clearing the way for the right yes. The other piece of this mindset shift is remembering why you sell in the first place. Photography isn't just pictures. It's legacy. It's memory. It's connection. Selling isn't about taking money from people. It's about giving them something that lasts. When I stopped seeing sales as an exchange of dollars and started seeing it as an exchange of value, everything clicked. I wasn't selling an album. I was offering a family the chance to sit on the couch years from now, flipping through pages that remind them of who they were and how they loved. I wasn't charging $400 for a session. I was giving parents the gift of freezing a season of their child's life before it slipped away. That mindset reframed selling as service. And service never feels sleazy. I'll share a story that cemented this for me. A few years ago, I delivered an album to a family who had just welcomed their second child. The mom opened it, started crying, and said, "This is exactly what I wanted. I feel like I can finally breathe knowing these memories are safe." That moment wasn't about the money. It was about the relief and joy she felt. The money was simply the vehicle that made it possible. When you experience that enough times, selling stops being a chore. It becomes part of how you serve. This mindset shift also gave me the freedom to set boundaries without guilt. I used to think saying no to discounts or extras meant I wasn't being kind. Now I see that the kindest thing I can do is protect my business so I can keep serving clients for years to come. When I hold my boundaries, I show clients that I believe in my value, and that belief actually builds more trust than giving in ever could. So how do you start living out this mindset shift? Begin by reminding yourself daily that selling is clarity. Write it down. Put it on your desk. Repeat it before client calls. Selling is clarity. Selling is service. The more you internalize that, the less your body will go into panic mode when money comes up. You'll start speaking naturally, with confidence, because you're no longer trying to prove yourself. You're simply inviting clients into something meaningful. Here's what it comes down to. Clients don't need you to be perfect with your words. They don't need you to deliver a flawless pitch. They need you to be steady. They need you to be confident enough in your own value that they can trust you with theirs. And that confidence isn't fake bravado. It's the quiet kind, the kind that comes from knowing your numbers, practicing your delivery, and believing in the service you're offering. If you take anything from this entire episode, let it be this. You don't have to panic when pricing comes up. You don't have to dread sales conversations. With the right mindset, you can approach every client interaction with calm confidence, knowing that your role is not to convince, but to serve. And if you want a place to practice these conversations, to role play with people who understand, to swap scripts and get feedback, I'd love for you to join us inside the Savvy Shutterbug community. It's where photographers just like you are learning to talk about pricing with clarity, without panic, and without the fear of sounding salesy. You don't have to figure this out alone. We're building these muscles together, and I'd love to see you there.